Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Facebook. Welcome, Instagram. Welcome, LinkedIn. Welcome, YouTube. Welcome to another episode of Break Into Law School. What three things should you absolutely try to avoid in your law school personal statement? For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery, and I am the CEO of Montgomery Admissions Consulting, where I specialize in working with first-generation and minority law school applicants. I am so excited to be with you today because we're talking about personal statements. Now, it is September, and that means that for most schools, the applications are open. Which is exciting. It's exciting that all of this preparation, all of the time that you have spent working on your applications, we have finally come very close to the finish line. Although I know for some of you, you may still feel like you're at the beginning. Because maybe you haven't studied your essays yet, and that's okay. We can work through that. But I want to talk to you about what three things you should absolutely try to avoid in your personal statement when you are trying to showcase your authentic self, when you are trying to really tell your story, when you're trying to have the admissions committee get to know you a little bit more. Now, just some housekeeping. I will be answering questions at the end. You can always submit questions to bit.ly/breakintolawschool. And I already have some questions that people have submitted, so I will make sure to go over those. But also, while you're here in the comments, let me know where you are in the process. Let me know if you're just starting. Let me know where you are with your personal statement, because that's what we're diving into today. I want to know if you started it. Do you have an outline? Do you know what an outline is? Have you started your draft? Are you done? Some of my clients are done with their essays, and it's such a great feeling to look at someone and say, yeah, it's good. Let's send it. There's really nothing more satisfying. It's one of my favorite moments working with students when we can really just have that, like, wow, we really did that. Like, remember where we started, remember where we are right now, and look at the growth, look at the transformation, look at how not just you learned to write better, but you really refined your story. You also refined your reason for going to law school. You got clarity on your own journey, and that's something that is way more valuable, when you have that clarity and you have that purpose. So let me know where you are in the journey, and how I can help you. Now, today, like I said, we're going to talk about the three things that you should try to avoid in your law school personal statement in order to have the strongest personal statement possible. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the phrase that you should never say. My students already know what the phrase is. I bet there are people in the comments who already know what the phrase is. Oh my goodness, if I had $1 for every time I heard this phrase, I could buy a house. And we're actually, I'm in that process, in that stage of my life where I'm looking at trying to buy a house in the near future. And so that's not even like a facetious thing that I'm saying. It's just like, yes, no, actually, probably could. This is down payment money, the number of times I've heard this phrase. The second thing is what you should try to avoid as you work on progressing through the paragraphs in your essay. How do you want your essay to flow, and how should your essay not flow? And then the third thing we're going to talk about is what are the things that you actually just shouldn't say in your personal statement? Maybe it's information that the admissions committee doesn't need. What is that? When are you oversharing? And I'll give you a little hint. It's actually probably not what you're thinking about. I know a lot of students are concerned, I can't write about this topic, or I can't write about that topic. And I don't really know that I subscribe to that. I don't believe in operating in absolutes. But I do believe that there are certain ways that you want to write and certain ways that maybe are not putting you in the best light possible. So let's go ahead and dive in. So that first thing, what is the phrase that I just cannot stand? There's some variations. Sounds a little bit like, I want to give voice to the voiceless. My goodness. Listen, I want you to be looking at your personal statement draft right now. If you have the phrase, give a voice to the voiceless, like usually it's said just like that, just cross it out. Just say something more specific. Not only is it cliche, I don't know what that means. Because oftentimes when students talk about giving voice to the voiceless, voice to those who don't have a voice, a say to those who have been silenced, a representation to those who don't have it, right? All of those, but really voice to the voiceless. That's the key there. Usually those essays are also overall very vague or not focused on what area of law you want to affect change in. Oftentimes, students in their personal statements will feel like they should spend their personal statement describing qualities that they have that would make them a good lawyer. Maybe. Yes, you should show me that. Please don't tell me. I always say show, don't tell. So show me that through stories and anecdotes. So they'll focus on, okay, these are the things that make me a good lawyer or a good law school student. This is maybe what I've overcome. Your personal statement is not an adversity statement. It's not an overcoming essay. Please just take that piece of advice and throw it in the trash. And then, they'll kind of say like why we need more lawyers or how they want to generally contribute to the legal career or the legal field. And sometimes people even list, like I've seen personal statement drafts where people are like, I want to give voice to the voiceless, whether it's in housing or criminal or education or health and I'm like, you don't know why you want to go to law school. That's what that sentence told me. You have this vague notion of justice for all. Okay, that's another phrase. Take that out. But like you have this vague notion of justice for all and really serving marginalized groups, and you don't actually have any specifics though. And there are a lot of ways to affect change, and there's a lot of ways to affect equity. Equity is really important to me, right? I work really hard to speak on issues of equity and access for college and higher education, law school admissions, but also when it comes to women entrepreneurs, women of faith, breaking down some societal barriers there, women pursuing education of all kind. But I really mostly focus on education and business, right? That's the area that I want to affect change in. There's lots of graduate schools. There's law school, sure. There's public policy school. There's public health. There's education. There are a lot of ways to create policies that will be anti-racist in their efforts in deconstructing systems of oppression. Unpopular opinion, the law is not the only way to do that. It is one way, not the only way. Unpopular opinion, there are many different areas of law that can affect change, but if you don't have an idea of which area of law you want to practice in, you might not be as effective because you won't be as focused, which means you might not actually take advantage of the clinics and the journals and the things that are going to advance your career quicker so that you can make the impact on communities that you want to make. Be specific. Law school is very expensive. Not just with money, although it's very expensive with money, but I know there's lots of ways to go to law school for free. Certainly, there's lots of ways to get scholarships. Over half of my students end up with more than a half tuition scholarship to law school. So even if you took the financial aspect out of it, it's expensive in terms of time. It's 3 years of your life. And it's 4 years if you're doing a part-time program. I mean, it's a lot of time. It's a big investment. It is okay to have clarity and focus on why you want to go. There is this thought that you shouldn't be boxing yourself in, that you shouldn't, be too focused. It's okay to change your mind when you get there. It's okay to be influenced by your surroundings, but you should know why you want to go to school. You should know why you're committing this. There should be something that's pulling you, and it should be more than just this amorphous idea of bringing justice, because to be honest, what schools are concerned about, what I'm concerned about sometimes when I read those phrases, is that you are an idealistic person who doesn't have an understanding of the realism behind being a lawyer. And if you go into law school with idealistic naivete, you might not actually finish law school, because you might get there and realize it is not what you thought it was. I don't want you to go to law school and realize it is not what you thought it was, right? I want you to go to law school and be like, absolutely, I have a purpose, I have a plan, I know what I'm going to accomplish. But if you just want to give voice to the voiceless, I'm not convinced, right, that you know exactly what you want to do. I have someone on Facebook is saying, I'm gonna need you to explain the critique, say it with your chest. So this actually really does tie into that last thing, because usually when I see the phrase, I want to go to law school to give voice to the voiceless, it comes at the end, right, when you're trying to wrap it up. And oftentimes it comes in at the end because you have not done a good enough job walking me through the development of your passion for the law or a particular area. So, I usually say, okay, let's say you're really interested in health law, which I think if I were to go back to law school and do it all again, I mean, I love my job, so probably nothing would change. This is the greatest gift that God has given me, to be able to work with students on their journeys, to be able to be part of this moment in your life. But if I were to go back and I said I want to practice law and I want to do it all again, I probably would have focused more on health law. I am someone that has an autoimmune disease. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disease. I have fibromyalgia. I didn't have any of these when I went into law school, but I have found over the last 5 years or so all of the inequities in the healthcare system. There's so much. I could go on for days. But let's say you do want to study healthcare, right? You want to at some point create this tension of like, I've been doing these things and maybe I have done some healthcare policy, or maybe I've done that, but it's not enough. I need the law. I need a legal degree to really take it to the next level, to fully do what I want to do. Because sometimes students don't give me that next step. And I'm like, oh, great. You've effected all this change. Keep doing it. Why are you coming here? Why do you need a law degree? I'm very confused. You seem to be very successful at creating the change that you want to create. So you need to still create that healthy tension, right? And so sometimes when students don't weave in the law or create that tension, that more, that pondering, right? The seeds of, I know that I need to level up. I know that I need a shift in my career in order to further my calling. Then we get this like kind of hodgepodge situation at the end where you're just like, oh, by the way, in the law is the answer. I didn't give you a problem, but the law, it's the answer. And I'm going to give voice to the voiceless. And I am, I'm really passionate about maybe these things. And you just sort of rattle off like a couple of like clinics or whatever. And I do sometimes usually say to my clients that it can be good to put in a couple clinics or programs or that kind of thing at the end, if it makes sense. Some of my clients, their essays are very complete in and of itself and also very long. And we've hit that 2-page mark. You should stop at 2 pages. I don't care what the school really says. They want 2 pages. And so, when we've come to that moment, I'm like, okay, let's see if this works with your essay or not, to throw it in there. But what you don't want to do is finish weak. And so, again, voice to the voiceless, big statements, justice for all, be part of change. And it's like, you were so good until you got to the last paragraph. And now I am annoyed, or just kind of like, oh. And that's not the last feeling you want to leave with admissions, right? Like, you want to take them on a journey that ends strong. So I do sometimes write on my students at the end, say it with your chest, because, I need to feel it, right? Like, you need to, make me feel that you want to be a lawyer at the end and what you're going to do with it, right? Future looking is always great. Tell me what you're going to do with your law degree. And say it with conviction. Don't just give me some half-assed sentences, because I can tell that they're half-assed, and then I think you have a half-assed passion, right? Or not fully developed passion, or you haven't even done any research, right? You're going into a $200,000 investment, whether you're paying for it or the school's giving you a scholarship, and a 3-year investment, and if you can't even tell me with conviction and specificity what it is that you want to do with this degree, I have no idea why I would let you in. Your personal statement, your application as a whole. I want you to think of it as like your first case, right? Okay, so you have a premise, something that you're trying to prove to maybe the jury, and that's like your reason to go to law school. I want to go to law school to, help create more equitable and sustainable healthcare policies for women and children. Maybe that's your bylaw statement. Sounds good, right? Now I want you to prove it. And the pieces of evidence are the stories in your personal statement. You should have more than one, ideally probably 2 to 3. And you're going to show through stories those evidences, so that I am convinced, because I have now walked through your thought process and the imagery, and you've put me in the story with narrative writing, and you've demonstrated to me your character, and I've learned about you. Oh my God, you really do care so much about healthcare policy for women and children, and you've been in this area doing this thing. And I also see why you're not getting an MPH. I see why you need to come to law school, because this is starting to make sense to me. You have convinced me. Convince them, right? If they're not convinced, you have not done your job. This brings me to point number 2, how you don't want to progress your personal statement. So sometimes students just give me a narrative of their resume, sometimes their whole life. We'll just start from age 8 and we'll just go to now, which, depending on how old you are, is a lot of words. Do not just give me a chronological play-by-play of your life or your resume. They have your resume. Remember, I tell you, your personal statement, actually your application as a whole, is like a puzzle. I say that over and over and over and over again. It's actually funny. I had a new client consult the other day. And it's good. I think this must be how teachers feel, or parents. I don't have kids yet. I know a lot of you out there are moms. Shout out to moms. We're going to be doing a series soon on balancing motherhood with the Lsat, balancing motherhood with going to law school, balancing motherhood with being a lawyer. I'm really excited for it. I don't have any kids yet, and I won't until due time, God willing. But I think that this is a demographic that I am so inspired by, because when I think about my life and I think about how hard it is to take care of me, and then I think about taking care of someone else, I'm just like, y'all are superheroes. Y'all are just like, where are the flowers that I can be giving you, right? But so, when we think about your personal statement, when we think about the stories that you're telling and the progression that you're telling, I don't want you to just chronologically go play by play into your life. What this oftentimes looks like, and I was telling you that I had a client recently who's told me what I had told her, and so I was meeting with her, and she said, "Oh, I know. You always say that applications are like a puzzle, right? And that your puzzle's got different pieces, and you could be a 10-piece puzzle or a 50-piece puzzle." And I was like, wow, someone was listening. I mean, that's a great feeling. Like I said, I'm sure moms know this feeling. I'm sure teachers know this feeling. It's just like, I talk, someone's listening. Sometimes I talk to you guys, I don't know. But that felt really good. So your application, it's a puzzle. You want to be a bigger puzzle, right? You want to give them as many pieces as you do as possible. But you also don't need repeat pieces. No one needs to write corner pieces, okay? Your resume has a purpose. Your personal statement has a different purpose. Your personal statement should not just be your resume in narrative form. First off, why even have a resume? Second off, I think it comes from this fear. I think there's genuine fear that they will not read your entire application, and that you have to talk about everything that's good and memorable to you on your resume in your personal statement in order for it to matter. That's not true. They actually do read every piece of your application. They read it thoroughly. They love their jobs. Maybe not all of them, but most of the admissions professionals I know, they love their job, right? And so they don't want to just, kind of go through. They're going to go through your application because they know it's a really big deal. And sometimes they even think about, they think about applicants, and they really get to know them. I don't know how many of you guys are listening to Navigating Law School Admissions with Miriam and Christy. Shout out to that podcast. It's amazing. If you haven't started listening to season 2, you are sleeping. Definitely go check it out. But what I love about Miriam and Christy and some of the guests is that they really do talk about the impact that the applicants have had on them. And so they read it, right? And so sometimes what I will see students do is I will see them just give me a narrative play-by-play on their resume, but not all of those stories relate to their why law statement, right? Not all of those stories relate to the reason why they're pursuing law. It might not relate to healthcare policy for women and children, for example. But also, you cannot fit 12 stories into your personal statement. You have 2 pages. I want you to understand the difference between how things are written on your resume and how things are written on your personal statement. On your resume, you're telling me usually what you've done, right? I did these things. You have got some active verbs using, quantifiable descriptions. It's great. In your personal statement, I want you to show me a moment. So if you were working at a senator's office and you were, picking up the phone call and, constituents were calling in and you were drafting things, I want you to show me a phone call that really mattered. I want you to show me something that you worked on that made an impact. I want you to tell me what you thought about it. How did this continue to push you in the path towards law school? How did this shape what you thought about an issue? How did it change or challenge what you thought about an issue? It's okay if you had a thought one time and then you had an experience that kind of changed your thoughts. Take me through that. Let me understand who you are as a person through your examples. Choose your moments. You cannot tell them everything. This is not an autobiography. Some of you have lived enough for several books, okay? But you cannot show me all of that in a 2-page personal statement. So instead, be judicious. I have seen maybe up to 4 stories work well. Maybe you have some context, and then you have 3 really substantial stories, and then a conclusion. That's a perfectly fine way to go about it, but they should be moments. And I can always tell when students start to list. There at this organization, I did this and this and this, and I was this and this and this, and I was this and this and this, and I was this and this and this. And I asked them, I said, is this on your resume? Yes? Great. Take it out here. I don't want to see it. Because what you've done is you've caused me to disengage, right? I want to stay engaged through the entire story. I want to be captivated by the moments. But when you start going into a list of your accomplishments, and there's ways to show your accomplishments in your personal statement without listing, but when you start going into a list of your accomplishments instead, I become disengaged. I start glossing over it, and then you've kind of lost me. We're not making that impact. So please, 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 your personal statement is not just a chronological retelling of your life or even your resume. And some of you really do have a chronicle retelling of your entire life, which brings me to the 3rd point today. What is the information that you don't want to tell me? Some of you really are very honest people. And I love that. You're going to make a great lawyer. But you don't need to tell me about the time that you thought you were going to be a doctor, and then you thought you were going to be a dentist, and then you thought you were going to be a ballerina, but then maybe you weren't very good at ballet. I wasn't very good at ballet. So then you said, well, I'm not going to be a ballerina, so maybe I will be a pianist. Oh, just kidding. You know what? The law seems good. Don't do that. Do not walk me through all of the other careers that you thought about before becoming a lawyer. Remember when I said that this was like a case and you got a jury and we got some pieces of evidence? All of you have 3 to 4 solid pieces of evidence, moments that you can weave together in narrative form that connect to the reason for why you want to go to law school. Make it tight. Make it a great case. Do not insert doubts. If we go back to the entire thing about, it's a case, right? So you're trying to present the case, I want to go to law school so I can be a healthcare, do healthcare policy for women and children. Let's just say, that's my example today. The other side, because in a case there's always two sides, the other side is trying to prove that you don't know why you want to go to law school, you don't have any focus, and you're not ready. That is the other side. When you tell me all of the ways you were confused and didn't know if the law was for you, and you weren't really sure, you never really thought you'd be a good lawyer. I have seen that so many times. I never really considered the law. Why are you telling me this? You are just giving evidence to the other side. They don't need your help. The other side is not the side that you want to be giving evidence to. I only want you to focus on the stories that create this tight narrative so that I feel convicted in your reasons. Because honestly, if you're going through this process, this is not an easy process. If you've been studying for the Lsat for 6 months, 12 months, 3 months, whatever, you're not just doing that because got nothing better to do. Like, this is a hard process. You have put time and money into this process. So I know that you are convinced that this is what you want to do. But you now have to tell the admissions. You have to make them feel it too. And all the words that I see when students send me essays and they just continually tell me, I didn't really think I'd be a good lawyer. I never really thought about this before. I really wanted to be a doctor, but that didn't work out. Like, stop. Don't tell me this. This does not belong in your personal statement. Your personal statement is for you to explain to me and be authentic, but explain to me why going to law school is the next logical step in your journey. Please do not use that phrase either. Show me, don't tell me, and why the law is for you. What is it that you're trying to do? So to kind of recap, there are 3 things that you should really try to avoid in your personal statement. The first is this phrase, being a voice for the voiceless, and any kind of derivative phrase of that. Because usually when you say that, it comes in the midst of a personal statement that's very vague on why you want to go to law school and what area you want to go to law school. So I would rather instead you say, I want to increase representation for women and children who aren't necessarily able to advocate for themselves as much in the healthcare industry. Do you see how I said voice to the voiceless without saying that? And do you see how much stronger that was? Like, who is it that you want to serve? Who do you want to advocate for? Who do you want to hold accountable for? Whose voice is the voiceless? Give them some identity in your essay. And what are they trying to say? What's the voice that they want to have heard? Tell me that instead. Don't just say voice for the voiceless. That's lazy writing. We can do better than that. The second point is that you do not want your personal statement to just be a narrative of your resume or a narrative of your entire life, because some of you are also doing that. I'm going to really remind you that your personal statement is 2 pages. I cannot tell you the number of 6-page personal statements that have come across my desk lately. Please don't do that. 2 pages double spaced, not 2 pages single spaced, not 2 pages 8-point font, 2 pages double spaced, 11 or 12-point font, Times New Roman or Arial. Fun fact, Times New Roman is a little smaller than Arial, so just stick with Times New Roman. Absolutely fine, right? But do not give me a narrative of your whole life. Do not give me a narrative of your resume. Really focus on those key moments that are related to your reason for going to law school, the area that you want to affect change in, and show me by connecting these 3 to 4 moments together. And then that last point is that don't tell me that you weren't sure you wanted to go to law school. That completely undercuts your entire case. Don't tell me that you wanted to be a doctor first. Don't tell me all of the things that I don't need to know that are going to cause me to have doubts now about your surety. I want you to be convincing in the stories that you tell. I want you to be authentic and truthful. But I also want you to know that you are probably more sure than you're giving yourself credit for. Not all of the stories have to be, I knew I wanted to go to law school. That's not how life works. Sometimes you don't know. But maybe if there's a particular area of law that's driving you, there are key moments in that area. There are key moments that you can focus on. And through your essay, we're understanding how this passion for this issue developed. And then ultimately the tension that's created when you realized you needed to go to law school in order to fulfill your calling. So hopefully that was helpful. We're going to take questions before I pray us out. I just want to remind everyone that I do have a personal statement course, of course, and it's 50% off if you have an LSAC fee waiver. All of my hourly consulting is also 50% off if you have an LSAC fee waiver. And my boot camps are 10% off for all fee waiver students, all military veterans, all Theta members. Shout out to Kappa Alpha Theta. Military veterans and Theta members can also get 10% off the personal statement course. So I try to help out where I can. But yes, so we did have questions, and I wanted to answer this question. Someone says, "Hi, I'm an older future law school student. I took the LSAT twice and my scores were so low. I plan to take the exam one more time. Do you think I should achieve my target score practice-wise before registering for the LSAT this last time? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it." So that really depends. If you are applying this cycle, the November LSAT registration actually closes on September 29th. And I'm a little bit about LSAC, I will just say. I told you guys when the scores were going to be released, and I was pretty confident about that because that's what was on their website. And then they took those dates down. It's concerning. But they've put them back up. So now if you go to LSAC, you will actually see all of the score release dates. The October LSAT exam, the release date's on October 27th. The November LSAT release date is on December 1st. I mean, that's what it is right now. They may change that. I'm not sure, but that's at least what it is right now. So I just wanted to give you guys that updated information. Because the November LSAT registration deadline is September 29th, you don't actually have a ton of time to make that decision, right? You only have about 12 days. So no, I wouldn't say you need to wait to your practice testing at your ideal score before registering, because there's a lot of time between now and the November test. And there's enough time for you to get to your score. I mean, depending on what your ideal score is and how far away it is, with the right prep, there's definitely a way for you to improve. I don't want you to necessarily wait, because then you might end up having to take the January LSAT, and I don't usually recommend that. So I would register, and then I would just do everything in your power to be ready. So one of my business coaches says, you make a decision and you make it right. So instead of worrying about was this the right decision or not, you make the decision, you make it right. Shout out to Melissa Kellogg at Avanti Creative. She's fantastic. But so you make the decision to take the November LSAT, you make it right. How can you do that? Figuring out what is it that you're doing for prep. So I have on my website a list of recommended tutors and test prep courses. I think if you're looking to make improvements quickly, I would go with LSAT Demon. I usually send a lot of my students there, especially, if they're not happy with their August score, they're taking October. I'm not an LSAT tutor, but I do know that the amount of increase that you can make with LSAT Demon in a short amount of time is really remarkable. A lot of it is because they have the smart AI drilling, but they also, if time is something that you have an abundance of, which is never something I have an abundance of, but if it's something you have an abundance of, they have live classes every single day, like 5 or 6 live classes every day. They've proctored exams on the live version. They have an Ask Me button. They also have a premium and a basic version. But the great thing is you pay month to month, right? So you can make a lot of progress. If you had time, if you had 30 days and you had a lot of time, I would just really invest in, I think it's like $295, which is, a great amount of money really to spend for the type of increase you might have for the smart drilling and then also the classes. I don't get any money from saying that. I just like it when my students have scores that go higher. So that would be really great. Or shout out to a lot of the tutors that we have on our site. The other courses that I recommend are good, but not if you're trying to make really fast improvement. They're better for more foundational work. But Mina at Logic Games Pro, I trust her with my life. She is a tutor that will get your life together. She's fantastic. Another Black woman from Harvard Law. She's been a professional tutor for, like 10 plus years. There's Jasmine, Tutoring by Jasmine. There's Jake Kleinbaum at Premier Lsat. So those I really, really vouch for. I know that my students have had fantastic experiences working with them. They're culturally competent, they're affordable, they're caring, they're compassionate, they're empathetic. That is what aligns with my company. So I want to make sure that I'm sending my students somewhere where they're going to benefit and thrive. Now, if your issue is, you don't perform well, right? So maybe your practice tests are great, but you're not testing well when it comes to test day, then I would really suggest infusing mindfulness into your practice. So I always be saying it. The link will be down below. I always recommend the Mindfulness for Academic Achievement course. It's $17. It is literally the best $17 you're going to spend in this entire law school journey. It supplements your studying. It gives you good breathing techniques. It gives you good refocusing techniques. I've had students say that it doesn't even just help with the LSAT, it helps with other areas of the life as well. So definitely do that. That is at Granite Test Prep, Mindfulness for Academic Achievement, with Grantley Neely. He's fantastic. I had him on the show a couple of months ago, and honestly, just such a gem. So depending on what it is that you need to do between now and the November test, I would either really reshape your prep or add some mindfulness. There's a lot to be said for the free resources or not so free resources with LSAC or like Khan Academy or those sort of things, maybe low cost books. But what you're going to make up in not investing in money, you're going to cost you in time. Right? This is a process where you either have time or you have money. Unfortunately, you don't really get both. And so I would say at this point, we need to be prioritizing time. So I have another question. I'm a registered nurse. I have a patient story to tell for my why law statement. This patient story relates to me personally. Doesn't make sense to tell both stories in my personal statement. So I want you to make sure that you are always centering yourself in your personal statement. So your why law statement, if you will, it should really be like, why do you want to go to law school, right? Like one sentence about your reason for going to law school, because you're not just going to law school for this one patient, right? You're going to law school for maybe other patients like her or him. You can, as part of your multiple stories, again, you should have at least 2 to 3, sometimes people do 4, but you should have at least 2 to 3 pieces of evidence there. One of them can be your experiences with the patient, but I do not want you to tell the patient's story. We often get into this issue where we center other people's stories, whether that's an immigrant story, we're talking about our parents, we're talking about our grandparents, we're talking about how hard we watch someone work, or maybe something that we witnessed, but I really only care about you. And I know that sounds kind of callous, but they really don't care about your patient. They do care about what you did. So reframe things, right? What was it like for you to be with that patient? And what was it like? What was going through your mind? What did you feel? What did you see? What did you experience? What did you think? What did you wish you could do? What did you do? That's a you story. Yes, it's technically you're doing things because of a patient, but I don't really want you to tell the patient's story. I really only want you to tell your story and other stories. Like your whole personal statement can't be one incident or even just 2 incidents, because that's not enough. Ideally you want to be weaving in the personal and professional, and there may be some overlap, but you want to be careful that even as you are talking about someone else, you want to make sure that you are centering yourself. All right, another question. What questions should our diversity statement answer? I want to write about my intersecting identities, but I'm struggling to bring them together in a uniform, clear way. So I think I remember that you mentioned your identities last time. My hair is just all up in my face. And I think you said that you were first gen, you were Latinx, you were also gay, and I think there was one more, but I'm missing it. And so, when we talk about, yes, Awesome. When you talk about those intersecting identities, I want you to think about how how do those change how you see the world. Another way to think about it is if one of those were not there, right? If you were just Latinx and gay, but not first gen, or an immigrant and Latinx, but not gay, right? How would that have changed? Um, in the diversity statement, it's one page, double spaced. Some schools, it's only 350 words. Some schools, it's 1 to 2 pages, but good rule of thumb, one page, double spaced. And usually, the first paragraph or so is kind of your setting the scene. It might be narrative, it might not be. It really depends on the story. But you want to be telling me what that diversity is, and showing me, right? Identifying it. And then maybe a story or an explanation about how it's impacted you. You want at least one moment. You want at least one narrative moment in your diversity statement. But I do know that some students try to pack everything in. The other point that I will make sure to mention is that if your reason for going to law school, let's say, I don't know what your reason for going to law school is, but let's just say your reason for going to law school was immigration law. Then in your diversity statement, I would focus instead on being Latinx and gay, because you've already kind of covered the immigration in your personal statement. So that's one way. Now, you might just want to do mergers and acquisitions, and maybe it has nothing to do with your identities, and that's fine. So then in your diversity statement, you're trying to figure this out. But I would say you are intersectional by virtue of like existing, and your three identities continue to collaboratively shape how you view the world. You can't just divorce them. So I would try to highlight a moment that, or two moments, sometimes depending on how you write it, that will illuminate that. But the question that the diversity statement should be answering is, okay, great, you've told me this diversity, you've given me how it's affected you. How has this shaped your perspective on the world? How do you interact with others differently? How are you going to contribute to the diversity of the law school classroom? Why is the classroom or the community, the campus, going to be different, better, because you're there? What perspective are you going to bring that is going to add to the richness and flavor of the campus? That's kind of the question there, right? And so oftentimes students stop right before that point and you're missing the prompt, right? Diversity statement, it's an optional prompt. Every school words it slightly differently. It's kind of all the same. But you want to make sure that you are connecting it back to how you interact with others, or how your perspective is going to be beneficial to others around you. What you've learned from it that's caused you to grow as a person. All right, so then I'm an immigrant, asylum seeker, and I want to talk about that experience in my personal statement. But I have heard from some that immigration personal statements can be a cliche. What do you think? I think there are no absolutes. Do you want to go into immigration law? If you want to go into immigration law, you absolutely have to tell part of your story. It shouldn't be your only story. I emphasize this again and again and again, right? Like, you need a few stories, few moments, tie them together. That's how you don't make them cliche, right? Because if the whole thing is just like, I came over and it was difficult and we didn't have these resources and, we were able to overcome it and now I want to help others. I mean, yeah, that's not very dynamic. I guess you could call it cliche. I get really concerned when I hear advice like, oh, that topic is cliche, because it's like, that topic is your authentic story. Okay, your authentic story cannot be cliche. You want to go to law school for a certain reason. But if, you talk about in the context, okay, I want to do immigration law, right? So maybe the beginning is like a little bit of a story, narrative writing. I mean, if you write it, a beautiful story is never cliche. But if you give me a story and then you tell me what you did with it, right? Okay, so cool. You came over here, you have this immigration story. Then did you do work at your college? Did you join a student group? Did you work at a firm? Were you canvassing for a politician? Did you, join a nonprofit? Did you volunteer at a tutoring center? Did you nanny? What are the other stories that are going to add layers that I can continually see how this has developed for you, right? When you have layers, then it's not cliche. If you only have one story, then it's boring. But when you have more than one story, it's not cliche. Your personal statement should be so unique to you that no one else can write it. Doesn't matter what the topic is. There's no topic that is like, oh, don't write about it. A beautiful piece of writing is a beautiful piece of writing, and that's what you want to be aiming for. Okay, so my nurse practitioner said that the patient told a story about her child's father who left the family, and so she could not afford health care. I related this growing up without a father and how it drives me to pursue law. Okay, so maybe your first story is about your experiences growing up without a father. And then your second story is about your interaction with a patient who could not afford health care. And maybe she told you, it's because I didn't have my father, and that reminded you of the fact that, you grew up without a father too. And what did you think about that? Did it make you angry? What did you want to do about that? Was it the first time that you had heard that? Maybe you hadn't thought too much about healthcare, without like a parent or a father, or maybe you had. Maybe it challenged your thinkings. And then tell me what you did after that. You need another story, right? Because so far that's only 2. So give me another one that shows me a little bit more, right? Develop that thought. So maybe you have your background, you have your interaction with her, she's caused you to think, she's challenged you, she's made you angry, she's opened your eyes to this issue. But I need like a so what before we get to just the law school portion. So hopefully that helps. But you still want to make sure that it's centered on you and centered on your feelings and your thoughts and your experiences. Okay. Are there any other questions? You guys have great questions today. I really love getting to know you, like through your stories. And again, that's exactly what admissions wants, right? They want to get to know you. Should we include citations in our personal statement? Never. Don't ever do it. Don't include citations. Don't include footnotes. Don't include quotes. You should not quote anything. There should be no quotes. So you have no citations because you have no quotes. I have a paragraph where I reference statistics, but I'm not sure whether I need to cite from where I got those stats from. My advice to you, don't put statistics in your personal statement either. They only want to hear about you. You're not teaching them about an issue. Pretend they are an expert. Whatever issue it is that you're passionate about, they're an expert. You don't need to give them statistics. They don't want statistics. They just want to hear about your experiences. Statistics do not go with a narrative story, right? You've taken me out of the story. You don't need to prove to them that this is an issue. They only want to hear about you. So you don't need statistics, therefore you don't need citations. What things do law schools hate applicants mentioning in YX school statements? Oh, we could do a whole video on this. They hate it when you mention their rankings and prestige. God, there is nothing more annoying than someone who is obsessed with prestige. I mean, there is literally nothing more annoying. And I say this, and I went to Princeton and Harvard Law School, and there are fantastic schools all up and down the rankings, even unranked schools. Your school does not define your worth, okay? I also Princeton was the most affordable school for my family because I didn't do a very good job at picking schools. I picked schools based off of Gilmore Girls. I really wanted to be in Connecticut. God told me to apply to schools in New Jersey. I didn't know too much. All right, my parents got their degrees through the military. I didn't know what I was doing when I applied to college. Our financial aid packages were a scary sight. It is by the grace of God that I got into Princeton because I did not get into Yale. It is by the grace of God that I got into Princeton because they have an endowment that could cover way more and above than any other school. And I will tell you that Harvard was also one of the best financial aid packages that I got. Yes, they're fantastic schools. Absolutely, they open doors. But prestige is not the most important thing. And if you lead with that in your why this school essay, I've seen students do that. Well, as a number 1 ranked school in this program, stop it. Don't do that. You need to be telling them still about yourself, right? Puzzle piece. Remember adding puzzle pieces. Don't just tell them what's on their website. Give them a little bit of something, but don't just quote their rankings back at them. It's gross. We hate that. So should I not include a quote that one of my favorite physiological theorists wrote? I wouldn't. I don't. It's not ideal. We don't really like quotes. No quotes, no stats, no citations, no footnotes. Story time. Just you can include dialogue quotes. I guess that's a quote, technically dialogue. So like if you're talking to someone, but quotes are not. I wouldn't. I would stay away from them. Okay. It is 12:55, so I'm gonna pray us out. I will be back here next week. As a reminder, you guys know that you can always find me at law.smontgomeryconsulting.com. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure that you like this video, share this video, subscribe, rate the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, Break into Law School. There's also the Mindful Prayers for Students podcast. We're in season 2. If you need more mindfulness and encouragement in your day, definitely check there. And then if you're looking to work with me, I have the hourly consulting, which is 50% off for LSAC fee waiver students. I have personal statement course, also 50% off for fee waiver students. And then we're running our last boot camps of the cycle, the accelerated boot camps, and then I still have a couple spots for private consulting. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to say thank you for engagement. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity, this gift to share my afternoon with those that you have called onto this journey, those that you have called to this path. Thank you for their desire to help and make an impact. Oh, there's so many fantastic people who are yearning for this profession. There's registered nurses, there's immigrants, there's asylum seekers, there's academics, there's mental health professionals, there's actors, there are women who have overcome domestic violence and sexual assault. There are women who have broken free from the confines of oppressive religious cults and religious organizations. There are men who have defied societal gender norms and also made it on their own despite families not necessarily being supportive. There are recovering alcoholics and addicts, single moms, married moms with 5 kids. There are those who are currently battling COVID, but still pursuing law school. There are those who are dealing with loss, dealing with grief. The pandemic has taken so much from us, and yet they still push through. There are so many who are struggling in this moment with increased anxiety, with depression, with imposter syndrome. I ask that you would be with them, that you would bring your comforting arms around them, that you would quell anxiety, that you would remove depression and show them that you are the joy in the morning light, that even though it is dark, the darkness can't last very long, that joy comes in the morning, that you are the source of their joy and that you live within inside them, so that the joy and the sunshine is in their hearts, and that they are capable and they are worthy and they have no need to feel imposter syndrome or like they're not good enough or comparing themselves to others, because you have called them for a specific purpose that is bigger and greater than they can even imagine. I ask that you would be with all those who are struggling with COVID in the midst of the applications, that you would be a healer, that you would lower fevers, that you would remove aches and pains, that you would prevent any long-term illnesses, that you would remove all the long-term effects, dear Heavenly Father, that you would just quickly move them through this experience so that they can refocus on the task at hand. As applications start to open and students start to submit, I just ask that you would be with them in discernment. There are a lot of decisions to make in this process. When should I register for the test? How should I study for the test? What test prep should I use? What, tutor? Should I get a tutor? Should I just do this? Dear Heavenly Father, there are so many decisions, and it may seem like they have to make all these decisions quickly because of the rolling nature of applications, but I just want to remind them, and I ask that you would go and remind them that your timing is divine and you do everything in perfect timing. I ask that you would be with those who are considering delaying their application, that you would also remind them that you already have a plan, Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and to give you a hope and a future." Philippians 4:6 says, "Be anxious in nothing, but in everything go to prayer and supplication." So, dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today in prayer. We remove our anxiety and we trust that you are going to do a good thing because you are a good Father. We put our applications in your hands. We say, have your way. We say, open the doors to the schools that you want us to go to, and we will accept that you will close the doors to the schools that you do not want us to go to, even if we want to. That we will trust in you and trust in your plan and trust that you have divine intervention, that you will shut up the distractions and the deflections and the imposters, the doors that seem like they are going to be for us but really are full of traps. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that you would guide them in the way that you would go, that you would make clear their reasons for going to law school, that you would make clear the moments in their life that they should use in their personal statements, that they would have fruitful brainstorming sessions, that they would be overcome with wisdom and how to tie the sentences together, that you would be a wordsmith for them, that you would be a miracle worker and a way maker. Dear Heavenly Father, I know that you are going to do great things in their life, and I thank you for their continued pursuit of the law and their continued pursuit of you. I ask that you would be with all those who are also questioning. Maybe they're not, sure how to find mindfulness or how to find peace or how to have calm, that you would show them where they're calm and where the peace lay. I ask all of this in your Son Jesus' name. Amen. All right, guys. I love you all. I love being here with you. I cannot wait to see you next week. And if you have any questions, don't forget to submit them to bit.ly/breakintolawschool. I will see you guys very soon.